So now let's code our hypothetical cast spell function. And the first thing we need to do before we cast any spell is to check whether the enemy character has enough points to cast the spell. And to check that, we need to access the enemy class and check its magic points variable. I can do this from the cast spell function using the getComponent function, and that is accessible to any monobehavior object. So I'm going to create a local variable called enemyComp, which is of type enemy, and it's going to equal the getComponent function, and I'm going to pass to that function the type enemy. So what is happening here, I'm calling the getComponent function. I want to get the enemy component on the game object, and a reference to that component is returned in the enemy component variable. Then what I want to do is to check whether the enemy has enough magic points to cast the spell. By default we need a minimum of 50 points, so I can check this by typing if enemyComp dot. Now notice I'm using dot and I can specify magic points, and notice now we can access the magic points variable in the enemy class. So I'm going to specify magic points. If the enemy's magic points is greater than or equal to the minimum number of points, then we have enough points to cast the spell. And to cast the spell, what we want to do is to reduce the magic points since we are spending them. So highlight that, paste that in, minus equals minimum points. That will reduce the magic points of the enemy by the minimum points. And then we want to cast the spell itself. And right now I'm just going to put in debug.log cast a spell to indicate that the spell was cast. I'm going to press Ctrl S on the keyboard to save those changes, minimize MonoDevelop, return back to Unity. My code now compiles, so let's give this a test. So I'm going to press the play button on the toolbar to begin playback of the game, and you can see it here. Now if you keep your eye on the enemy component here, and in particular on the magic points variable, you will see that when I press the S key on the keyboard to cast a spell, suddenly the magic points is reduced to 50, and in the status bar of the console you can see that it's printed the message cast a spell. Now if I press S again to cast a second spell, it's now reduced my magic points to 0 and I have cast a spell successfully. I press the pause button on the toolbar and switch to the console, and you can see that it's cast the spell twice, and now our magic points have been reduced to 0. So both the spell casting component and the enemy component are communicating successfully. That's how we can go about having components communicate with one another.